Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the monthly program Unfound Now on the Unfound Podcast Channel on YouTube. I am, of course, Unfound's host, Ed Denzel. I hope you're all doing very well. A very unique type of case, or should I say unique cases or unique disappearances for this month's Unfound Now. We're actually going to be covering 3 disappearances and a murder that are still unsolved, and it will be up to you to determine if all of them are related. Before I get started, I hope you will give this video a thumbs up as you are watching. If you are not yet a subscriber to the Unfound Podcast Channel, please do so right now. Hit that little bell button so that when we upload videos such as this one, you will be alerted immediately. Also, when I do the Unfound Live Show on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, you will be reminded. Maybe you forget about it. You will be reminded and you'll say, hey, I got to go watch the Unfound Live Show that Ed's been doing for about 4 years now, and it's on, and I want to watch it, because then you'll get to talk to me, ask me questions, and I always bring, I think, a lot of interesting topics to that show that ends up being 2 hours every Monday evening/night. So if you've watched Unfound Now before, what I'm about to say is familiar to you, but if you are a first-timer, there are 2 reasons that I do this program, Unfound Now, which I started in the summer of 2020. It's been about a year and a half, I guess. So number 1, it's awareness. Just like the regular program, the podcast that comes out every Friday, we're raising awareness about disappearances. That's maybe most important. That depends on your point of view. But the other reason is education. Many of you know that I have gone to a couple schools within the last month up to Louisiana and then down to South Florida, speaking to students about disappearances, not just giving them a list of disappearances and why I find them interesting or anything like that. I go to these schools because I want to teach them the basics about disappearances in general, using many of Unfound's disappearances as examples. I am all about education, educating the public, all of you, about disappearances, because I believe that is the best way, one of the best ways, that disappearances can be solved or even stopped before they happen. So this is Unfound Now is an awareness program. It is an education program. And what I do is I take recent disappearances, maybe within the last few months, take one every month, and I analyze it. I don't do necessarily any theorizing. I don't come to any conclusions as to what I think happened, but I'm just showing you how myself, my assistants, many other people who I've worked with on the program, how we look at disappearances when they come out in the news. And I think that's going to help all of you when you come across disappearance news in your area. And maybe you want to get involved, maybe just slightly or very in-depth, jumping in with both feet. That'll, of course, be up to you. So that's why I do Unfound Now. And Unfound Now also gives me the opportunity to look at some of these recent disappearances, something that I can't do on the regular Unfound program, because the rule there is a disappearance has to be a year old before we will cover it for the program. So the disappearances and murder that I will be talking about today are from the Turley, Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma area. Tulsa and Turley are right next to each other. And these all happened in mid to late October of 2021, so about a month ago. These people's names: DeWayne Selby is still missing, Glenda Parton is still missing, Shannon Miller is still missing, and the remains of Jack Grimes have been found, and it is being classified as a murder. That's what I'll be talking about today. And so, as you also know, if you've watched Unfound Now before, you know I always bring to each of these episodes discussion points, and I will cover each of these topics in much more depth later in this program. The discussion point number 1, couples and groups disappearances. Number 2, statistically, clusters are the same as non-clusters. And number 3, never underestimate family. Those would be the 3 topics after I show you a map of where these people went missing from, where Jack Grimes' remains were found, where these vehicles were found. And once I'm done with that map, I will come back to you and I will jump deeper into these 3 points. So now join me as I show you all the important locations for these 3 disappearances and this murder. Okay, let's look at this map for the disappearances of DeWayne Selby, Shannon Miller, Glenda Parton, and the murder of Jack Grimes. Now you're looking at this map and saying, man, that looks really weird, Ed. Well, I'm going to explain that to you eventually. But I'm going to zoom in. I just wanted to show you what the overview of it looks like. And now we're going to go in here to be down to the Turley/Tulsa, Oklahoma area. And I'm going to keep it like this just to keep things nice and neat. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this timeline, starting with the disappearance of Shannon Miller. And we'll eventually work our way down this list. On October 19th, Shannon Miller disappeared from the Turley area. Turley is essentially right here in this area. This is all Tulsa. They're right next to each other, but Turley is like right there. And then 2 days later, on October 21st, you see where this dot is up here. This is where his vehicle was found. It was found on a bridge over Bird Creek, 106th Street North. And his phone was in his car. But his other items, wallet and other items, were found down near the water. So that's Shannon Miller's from here. His vehicle was found up here. Not a lot of information as to where he could have been heading that day, who he might have seen last. Did he have any addictions or problems, issues? Somewhat unclear. But that's what you need to know first about Shannon Miller. So he goes missing before these other people go missing. So once again, October 19th, October 21st. Then on October 22nd, so the day after Shannon Miller's vehicle was found up here, DeWayne Selby, who is 59, and Jack Grimes, who is 76, they had known each other for a long time, living together. In fact, the two of them and Glenda were involved in a horse business at one time. They were headed from the Turley, Tulsa, Oklahoma area down to Fort Worth, Texas. And they never arrived. It's a considerably long drive. But something that they could have gone down there, drove down there for the day, turned around and got back in a day. That would not have been unusual, but they're going to another state. So they're leaving on October 22nd to go to Fort Worth for a horse show. These two and Glenda were involved in a horse business of some type at one time years ago, but they never arrived in Texas. But on that same day, and that's why this video looked so weird, I'm going to zoom out again. On that same day, October 22nd, seemingly allegedly, I love when I combine those two words together, they're seen on video down here in Purcell eating breakfast. So, and that would be the way that a person would go from Tulsa to Texas, going through Oklahoma City and then down that way. They were seen on surveillance video at a restaurant down there. What is unclear is how they ended up back here, because they never did get to this horse show in Texas. And as I just don't know how this video was even found. My best guess is one of them must have used a credit card, and so the police knew to look there. Just a guess, I have no idea, but that seems possible. All right, so they're seen on that video down here on October 22nd. Next day, October 23rd/24th, being that they never got to Fort Worth, Texas, a silver alert was issued for Jack Grimes, being that he's 76 years old. That is relevant. Who initiated this? Actually, it was somebody in the Fort Worth area who was expecting Jack there. He did not get there. A person called up to this area of Tulsa. Did he leave? Couldn't get a hold of him there. Nobody seemed to know where he was. And so that is how this silver alert got started. Somewhere on October 23rd or the 24th. So then on October 25th, which coincidentally is my deceased mother's birthday, Glenda Parton finds out about Jack and DeWayne, her son, missing. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let me just zoom that out a bit. She lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What ends up happening, though, she finds out, mother of DeWayne, she is seen that same day on the 25th at some store with one of DeWayne's and Jack's ranch hands. They talk. Doesn't seem like they left this place together in different vehicles, but police did somehow get video of her being with this guy. Seemed like the conversation was normal. And that was on the 25th, the same day that she became aware that DeWayne and Jack were missing. But the very next day, on the 26th, Glenda's vehicle was found. It's a Kia Soul. It's found on Highway 75 and 56th Street North, so right here. Right there. That's where her car is found. So we have to remember, Shannon Miller's vehicle found up here, and Glenda's vehicle, Kia Soul, found right here off this highway. The keys were in it, and so there was a silver alert issued for her. So now we have 2 silver alerts. 2 days later, on October 28th, Jack Grimes' car is found. It's a Ford Taurus, red Ford Taurus in Mohawk Park. That is right there. So once again, Shannon Miller's vehicle, Glenda Parton's vehicle, and Jack's vehicle. So even though DeWayne and Jack went missing first, it was Glenda's vehicle who was found first. Their vehicle was found second. Seemingly, I think, not necessarily by accident. I'm guessing police were just if they're riding around looking for these vehicles, and I think that's how they were found. Now, you should know something very interesting that is not noted on this map, but I'm going to show you where DeWayne and Jack lived at the time. I'm going to be very specific. Now, I'm going to get to that 2045 East 59th Place address here in a moment. DeWayne and Jack lived together right about there. Right there. Just to the west of where Glenda's car was found. Right about there. Let's see if my right hand is any steadier. Right there. So then on November 2nd, so what, 3, 4, 5 days after Jack's vehicle was found at Mohawk Park, hunters come across his remains at this location, this 2045 East 59th Place North. Man, that is a long name for an address. 2045 East 59th Place North, Oklahoma. You really got to change that. Right here in some brush. It's a hunting area, and his remains are found by accident. I'm guessing that some searches were done before when the car was found over in this area, but his remains were found over here by some hunters by accident. So I want to show you these now that I've gone through that, and that's where this stands right at this moment. Even though I'm doing this video on November 29th, there's really been no new news on any of this since Jack's remains were found on November 2nd. So let me go point this out again. Shannon Miller from Turley, his car is found there on the 21st. They leave to go to Fort Worth on the 22nd. They don't get there. Silver alert is issued on the 23rd, 24th. Glenda finds out about all this. She gets involved on the 26th. Her vehicle is found here. On the 28th, Jack's vehicle is found there. And then on November 2nd, Jack's remains are found over here. So what I'm also saying is Shannon's remains, if he is even deceased, have not been found. Glenda, if she is deceased, has not been found. She's not been found alive or deceased. And also DeWayne, he's also missing as well. Very, very convoluted. And it'll be up to you to determine what you think and what you think happened here. But now I'll be going back to those 3 points that I mentioned at the beginning of this video and get more in depth with them. Okay, we're back. Now that you've seen the map, you've seen where some of these cars were found, where Jack Grimes' remains were discovered, seemingly by luck, by accident. Let me go back to those 3 points I told you about earlier in this episode. I'll start with number 1, couples and group disappearances. I will tell you, I didn't even really realize this until I started listing them, but we've covered a multitude of couples and group disappearances on Unfound over the past 5+ years. More, like I said, I really didn't think about it till I started going through every episode, and I was like, wow, we have covered quite a few. And I'm just going to name them for you. Of course, if you've been listening to Unfound for a while, and maybe you've had a chance to listen to our entire catalog, many of these names, all of these names are going to be very familiar to you. If you're newer to the program, and some of these names are not familiar to you, then you obviously have a lot of episodes in your future. Chris Mittendorf and Christina Branham. Young people, a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, they're still missing, but their car was found. Tammy Arthur and Chad Peters. They're still missing, allegedly went to Mexico. Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, probably one of the still unsolved, but there was just recently, within the last 24 hours, there's something going on with that disappearance in the investigation. But at the time of recording this, I'm not sure what that is. But their disappearances, some of the most convoluted facts and circumstances that we've ever had on Unfound. Bonnie Dagus and Jeremy Dagus, mother and son, went missing from right here in the Tampa area back in the 1990s. Jansen Brewer and Daniel Braden, they're missing, still missing, and a vehicle is also missing in that disappearance still. And by the way, if you see me looking off to my left, your right, I don't do this off the top of my head. Lara Bible and Ashley Freeman, very well-known disappearance. In fact, there was a TV show about their disappearances. Peggy and Patty McDaniel, sisters who are still missing over 40 years later from here in Florida. Dave Madot and all of his friends who went out into the Gulf fishing and scuba diving. Now, what is the common thread on all of them? What's the common thread? And this is something that we will apply to DeWayne's, Shannon's, and Glenda's disappearances, and, of course, Jack's murder. All of those disappearances of these groups, these 2 people missing, of course, we covered Flight 370 as well. That's a large group of people. All of them surely involve foul play. And so when you find out about a disappearance where 2 or more people went missing at the same time, most of the time it's going to involve foul play. I think that that's what I've learned over the last 5+ years. There are, of course, exceptions, and one that maybe we could think about, although it's still unsolved, but I'm certainly open to the idea that it wasn't foul play, even though many people do believe it was foul play, and that is Danielle Imbo and Richard Patron, who went missing from the Philadelphia area. They were driving back to New Jersey, never got there. They are missing, and their truck is still missing. Could be foul play, could be something else. Maybe they went off into a river. And in fact, after foul play, I would say the most common scenario or the most likely scenario would be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people in a car and getting into a wreck, driving into a river, driving off a bridge, losing control going around a turn or something like that, and the vehicle and themselves have just not been found yet. But I think for Unfound and all of those people I just named, pretty much all of them foul play. And many of them, not all of them, but many of them involved in things they shouldn't have been doing. Now, of course, Lara Bible and Ashley Freeman situation, they were collateral damage from something else. Jeremy and Bonnie Dagus, surely they were collateral damage from something else. Some of these other ones, though, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, probably hanging around the wrong people. Looking at this, Jansen Brewer and Daniel Braden, maybe that way, that as well. But either way, all of them, one way or the other, probably still missing to this day due to foul play. Something to keep in mind. Now, it's easy to look at that with these 4 people we're talking about for this episode because we know one of them, Jack Grimes, was murdered. So certainly foul play. But just in general, you hear about 2 or more people going missing, your first thought should be foul play. Next point to talk about, discussion point. Statistically, number 2, clusters and non-clusters are the same. And the reason I'm talking about that is because all these 4 people went missing or were murdered in a very small area. Now, what is unclear is DeWayne, Glenda, and Jack seem to all know each other, surely. But Shannon, is he connected or not? It's unclear. But here's something: we should not ever jump to conclusions when we see a cluster of disappearances happen in an area in a short amount of time. And I'll give you a very good example. We've covered 2 disappearances from the city of San Francisco in the last 5 years. Jackson Miller and Cameron Remmer. 2 young men who went missing. Now, if you start looking into it a little deeper, you will find that there are 3 other young men who are also missing from San Francisco in about a 5-year span. And they all disappeared within blocks of each other in San Francisco. And so your natural tendency is going to be, well, there might be a serial killer. Did they somehow know each other, even though it doesn't seem like they did? Could they all be connected? And those 3 other young men's names are Sean Seedy, Chris Dickerson, and Christian Hughes. Now, even though we've only covered 2 of them on Unfound, Jackson's and Cameron's, and I know those 2 disappearances very much in depth now, especially Cameron's. I spent an entire year working on it myself in 2019. Here's what I think I know about those 5 disappearances. They are not related at all. Not at all. Nothing that I've seen, even though, and you should know, I've spoken to Christian Hughes' mother. I've spoken to Chris Dickerson's mother. They've not been on the program yet, but I've spoken to them. And there's nothing that they've said. There was nothing that Jackson Miller's mother said. There was nothing that all the people I talked to regarding Cameron Remmer's disappearance said that could connect any of them together at all. Even though it seems that like they should be connected, because once again, like a span of 5 years, 5 young men within blocks of each other. But what you find out is each of these 5 men had their own issues going on, I guess you could say. I, of course, hope that they're all 5 still alive. I don't know what the odds of that are. Probably not very high, not very good odds. But they're surely not related. None of them. Not even 2 of them related. Nothing that I've seen yet at all. So what does this mean? So we have to be very careful regarding this. And you have to look at it from a statistics point of view. And I have an example, and I'm looking off to my left of my notes. When I lived in Las Vegas, there was a study done in Fallon, Nevada, which is in northern Nevada, far away from Las Vegas. A bunch of children were diagnosed in Fallon, Nevada with a very rare cancer. And I mean, a much higher percentage of children, maybe this is a cancer that happens in 1 in 2 million, and it was happening like 1 in 10,000 or something like that. And these children got this particular cancer way more than the stats ever said should happen. And so they started looking at the ground, the water, the air. They started analyzing, they used to detonate nuclear bombs up there in the testing area in northern Nevada. Did that have something to do with it? And here we are in 2021, and nothing has been proven that caused these children to get this very rare form of cancer. And many children got it. And what is also, but at the time they were thinking it must be something. It must be something. There has to be something that we're eating, drinking, something. But all of these tests, everything done, no proof of anything. And what's also interesting is that nothing in Fallon, Nevada has changed since these children were diagnosed with cancer. Since then, the numbers have gone back to normal. Even though the water hasn't changed, the air hasn't changed, nothing. But nobody talks about the reason, though, that I say statistically cluster like a cancer cluster is same as a non-cancer or cancer non-cluster, is that it is just as likely for these women or these children to get cancer an inordinate amount of time as it would be for a bunch of kids somewhere else where it should be they should get cancer 1 in 100,000, but no kids have gotten cancer at all. So it's the opposite. You'd think kids should be getting cancer, but they aren't. Whereas in Fallon, you wouldn't think kids should be getting cancer, but they are. Statistically, mathematically, both situations are the same. It's hard for people to understand. Why? Because places where kids don't get cancer don't get any coverage. Only places where kids get cancer get coverage. You forget about all these other areas. So there very well may be at the same time in Fallon, Nevada, while all these kids were getting cancer, there might have been another spot in the United States or in another country where kids are getting cancer under the average rate. But both situations statistically are the same. So when we bring that back to disappearances, yes, for all these people to go missing, whether it's in San Francisco, these 5 young men over a course of 5 years, certainly horrible. Certainly, you could say it's unusual and needs to be looked into. But statistically, it is the same as having some other city, some other part of the United States that is way under the rate for disappearances. But why don't those places get covered? Because you don't cover things that don't happen. You only cover news that happens, people going missing. We don't cover news of people not going missing. So it's something very interesting. And you should always default to that. Just because you see a cluster of disappearances somewhere, do not automatically think that something's going on, that there is a serial killer, that all these people knew each other. Further investigation is always warranted in those situations. Always. Please remember that. And the last point for this episode is never underestimate family. In regards to these particular people I'm talking about today for this Unfound Now, could Glenda and her son have run off? Could for example, could DeWayne have killed Jack and then Glenda and DeWayne ran off? Absolutely. I don't know if that happened, but it's certainly conceivable. But I will tell you that we do have some disappearances where I surely know that family members are covering for other family members. Some of those would include Susie Lyle, Eric Franks, Cleshindra Hall, Pamela Golden, Robert Wayne Cox. That's just a few. I could probably name 30 if we had the time. Where it is believed that somebody did something and a family member or other family members are covering for that person. Or we could even go, I guess a wife would be family, even though wife and husband are not blood, but you know what I mean. Wives covering for husbands, like I believe Dennis Bowman's wife was covering for him for all these years, him killing their daughter Andrea, for example. So we never underestimate that. Family will go a long way to make sure their own don't get charged with anything. So it's certainly conceivable that Glenda got down there, met up with her son. He said, yeah, I killed Jack and I'm going to be in trouble. And they decided, well, we're going to go on the run. And we have to remember, it's only been like a month. Anybody could go on the run for a month. So that has to be something that you never want to rule that out in looking at disappearances. So that's the third point for this Unfound Now. But there are some issues that are still unclear to me, and I'm just going to read them. Important points that are still unclear. We have no cell phone information. We're a month into these disappearances, this murder, and there's been no public news regarding what was going on with the cell phones of Shannon, of Glenda, of Jack, of DeWayne. We don't know. We don't know. And that's disappointing. Some other points. Did Glenda really go searching by herself? We know that her car was found in a certain area. But did she really decide, well, I'm going to go look for my son by myself? She's 80 years old. That's a little hard to conceive. What also is unclear is how did law enforcement exactly get the video from a restaurant in Purcell, or is it Purcell, Oklahoma, so far away from Tulsa and Turley? It's still unclear. How did they even know to look? I'm guessing maybe either Jack or DeWayne paid with a credit card. That's the first thing that occurs to me. But it would be interesting to know how they ended up getting video of these two guys so far away from where Jack was eventually found. It's still unclear. If they were in Purcell, Oklahoma, why did they seemingly turn around, and how did Jack end up back in Tulsa? I don't know. We don't know if there was any evidence in the vehicles. And it's still unclear to me whether Shannon Miller should be connected to any of this. It very well may be it's just disappeared all on his own, didn't know any of these people. It's still unclear. What do I think happened? I think you know that I really try to stay away from that, both in the episodes and on these Unfound Nows. There are a lot of possibilities. DeWayne murdered all of them, including Shannon. It could be that DeWayne killed Jack and DeWayne and Glenda are on the run and Jack is their only victim. All of them were killed by a third party, including Shannon. All of them, Jack, DeWayne, Shannon, Glenda, and that person has not been identified yet. That's certainly possible. DeWayne could have been murdered. It could be that Glenda really did go look for him somewhere and got lost and died. She was 80 years old. There's still a lot of possibilities regarding all of this, so I would warn you to not jump to any conclusions at this point. It very well may be tomorrow that you may think that DeWayne killed Jack. It could be tomorrow that DeWayne's remains are found and he was murdered too. We just don't know. But that is how I would urge all of you to look at a disappearance or disappearances such as these when you run across them in the news, whether national news or your local news. That's all I have to say about the disappearances of three of these people, and the murder of Jack Grimes. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We are on Patreon, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. PayPal.me/Unfound Podcast, the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. And if you'd like to contact me directly, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.